Hi, I'm Janelle Myers, a FIPTA student from the US. After doing my undergrad in chemistry and integrated science and working as a professional baker, I discovered food science and developed products for 4 years before deciding to go back to school. I was lucky enough to do my thesis work on one of my favorite ingredients as a baker, wheat flour. I compared making bread with regular wheat versus durum wheat, which is usually used for making pasta. The goal of our project is to fully understand the differences between the flours and how that makes the breads different. Eventually, this will help us make better bread using flour from durum wheat. This gives us two essential questions: what makes really good bread, and why is durum wheat flour different from common wheat flour? Let's talk about good bread. Picture the inside of your favorite loaf. See the irregular surface? That comes from air bubbles, which are created during mixing and made bigger during fermentation. They're important to make bread light and airy, and we can think about bread quality in terms of things that will help or hurt the air bubbles. First, they need a strong support system so that they can't rise to the top and burst like they would in a glass of soda. A lot of that support comes from the gluten proteins, which connect with each other to form a network. This gives the dough strength, along with enough elasticity that it can hold onto the air bubbles when they grow. Second, air bubbles need a way to make them more stable. In flour, this means we're talking about lipids. Some lipids, which we call polar, tend to make the bubbles more stable, while other lipids, which we call nonpolar, tend to make them less stable. The amount and the ratio of the lipids can impact the bubble stability in the dough. We also need to know how durum and common wheat flour are different. Our research looked at a lot of different areas, and two differences stood out. Durum has more protein total, but less of the kinds of protein that are especially good at giving dough strength and elasticity, and it also has more nonpolar lipids, the kind that tend to make air bubbles less stable. We can take a look at the air bubbles in breads made from durum and common wheat flour to compare them. In this image, the blue areas are the darkest spots in the original photo, so those are the air bubbles. The image on the left is common wheat flour, and we see that it has a lot of blue spots and that they're pretty small. The image on the right is durum wheat flour, and we can see that it has fewer and larger blue areas. This means larger air bubbles and a coarse crumb, which makes it lower quality and also tells us that something about the durum wheat flour is not helping those air bubbles that we need for good bread. By continuing to study how these flours are different, we want to link those differences to what we see in the bread, which will help us stabilize those air bubbles and make great bread from durum wheat flour.